a revision. And I've got my notes. I've got one copy of my notes from last week. If somebody would like a copy, maybe you're going to teach this or use it one day. If someone out there wants a copy for 1995, going once, going twice, you got them, brother. Come get them right here. There you go. That's right, for 1995. And that's not all. All right, we're going to review. We're going to review all the way up through Judges, and then we hit the ground running in the book of Ruth tonight. I will say this, that there's no way we're going to complete it tonight, and I'm not even going to try to. We're going to be together again next Wednesday, and we'll wrap up the story of the Old Testament in our walkthrough. All right, so how many of you were here last Wednesday? Show of hands. Pretty much everyone last Wednesday? All right, so if you weren't, then the ones that were here are gonna help you to catch up. We're walking through the Old Testament. We're learning a key word for every book in the Old Testament. We're learning the story of it's a story. That's what we're learning. We're learning the story. All right, key word for Genesis is... Let's try that one more time, because some of you, that spaghetti's just starting to settle and you're looking mellow out there. All right, key words for Genesis is beginnings. That was okay. All right, key chapter in Genesis is what? What's in Genesis 12? Call of Abraham. And from Genesis chapter 12 forward, we're learning the story of Abraham and his descendants. All right, that's Genesis. Book of Exodus is... All right, let's do it all together with the... All right, here we go. Ready? Everybody together. Here we go. Get your arm right there. Exit from Egypt. All right, one more time. Ready? Exodus. Exit from Egypt. Very good. Key chapter in book of Exodus. Chapter 20. What's in 20? 10 Commandments. Very good. All right. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Key word is offerings and feasts. Every time I do that, I look out and Alex is going, you look like sensei. Offerings and feast in the book of Leviticus. And then Numbers, bad book. Why do we call it a bad book? A lot of bad things happen in the book of Numbers. Name one. What is one bad thing in the book? You got it. The spies, bad report, 40 years in the wilderness. Do what? The golden calf. What else? Moses hits the rock. That one is always my top. I don't know, it just makes me sad that he strikes the rock and then God says, no, you're not going into the promised land. Book of Numbers, Deuteronomy. Why second law? Everyone 20 and older dies, the new generation, and God gives the law again in the book of Deuteronomy. All right, everybody, you got to get ready for this one. You ready? Pull back. And Joshua. Man, you guys did good on that one. There's another one that's going to catch you in a few minutes, but you did good on General Joshua. The book of Judges. Why do we call it cycles of sin? 7 times in the book, they did what was right in their own eyes. We're comfortable. We forget about God. He brings in one of the enemies. God brings a judge to deliver us. We get comfortable again, and we go through that cycle 7 times in the book of Judges. 7 cycles of sin in the book of Judges. All right, tonight, new territory. Put on your seatbelts. Here we go. Book of Ruth. Your key words for the book of Ruth are love story. Love story. The book of Ruth takes place during the time of the Judges. You have to, with any text, something that I always try to do is put myself into their sandals. In the book of Judges, there's a guy by the name of Elimelech, and his wife's name is Naomi. They have 2 sons. There is a great famine in the land of Israel, and Elimelech makes the decision that he's going to go to the land of Moab with his wife and 2 sons because he hears that there's food there, and he does. When he arrives in Moab, a short time later, Elimelech dies. His 2 sons each marry daughters. One's name is Orpah, and the other's name is Ruth. In the land of Moab, these are Moabite women that the 2 sons of Elimelech marry. 10 years later, the 2 sons die. And Naomi says, I'm going back to where my folks are, back in Palestine, Israel. I'm headed home. And the 2 daughters begin to take the journey with her, and she says, y'all just need to stay here with your people. And one of the daughters says, no, I'm not, I'm going to go with you. And this is, to me, is the most famous phrase in the whole book of Ruth. Ruth says this to her mother-in-law. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. And Ruth goes back to Israel with Naomi. I call it love story because she goes back, she does harvesting in the field of Boaz, and you know the story that Boaz and Ruth, they end up getting married. Love story. All right. There's a lot of takeaways. The kinsman redeemer, I'm not going to be able to go in that, but that's in here. But something that stands out to me when I come to the book of Ruth is faithful women in the Bible. Faithful women in the Bible. Little stories like this one that could have easily been passed over. But God sees the faithfulness of women. What's another book in the Bible named after a woman? Esther. Faithful woman. We're going to get there maybe tonight, I don't know, or maybe next year. But another faithful woman in the Bible. Mary and Martha, followers of Jesus. I mean, the list of faithful women in the Scriptures. The women that supported Christ. First ones to the tomb were women at the resurrection. And I mean, you could go on with the list. In the book of Ruth, there are 5 blessings. And I can't call them prayers. I call specifically blessings. Naomi gives most of them. Boaz gives one of them. When I was reading through Ruth a couple of months ago, for the first time, I saw those. I highly encourage, when you read a book of the Bible, if you can do it in one sitting, I promise you'll see things that otherwise you won't see. And for the first time, I saw chapter 1, verse 9, chapter 2, verse 12, chapter 2, verse 20, 4:11, and 4:14, 5 blessings in the book. Someone years ago encouraged me that whenever I was with my sons, or they were leaving, or I was leaving, to pray for my sons and bless them, and I do that with my boys. They're men now. And I look in here, and those blessings, some of those blessings are even in this book. 5 blessings in the book of Ruth. Through great tragedy and loss, Ruth becomes a part of the lineage of Jesus. Boaz is the father of Obed. Obed is the father of Jesse. Jesse is the father of David. And Jesus is the son of David. And so here you have a Moabite woman who is in the lineage of Jesus Christ, part of the miracle of this book, the book of Ruth. All right, we're going to do it all the way from the beginning, and we're going to come up to Ruth. Everybody ready? Good. Lee's out there. She's ready. And Stephen's sitting next to her going like this right here. Like, all right, here we go. You ready? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. No. All of you guys, this is what you said. I said Ruth, and you said love story. You sounded like Oscar the Grouch on Sesame Street or something. When you come to Ruth and you say love story, you got to say love story. So let's try that one more time. Ruth, Oh, that was beautiful. That was much better, guys. All right, 1 Samuel, that's our next one. 31 chapters. Guess who wrote the book? Samuel and someone else, because his death is in the book. I don't think he wrote that part. I'm just saying, I don't think he wrote that part of the book. He was the last judge, and he was a man of God. I love the story of Samuel. It's incredible, everything about this guy except part of his ending. I wish we had time to take a look at his mom, Hannah, because she is off the charts. She is another faithful woman of God. If you give me a son, I'll give him back to you, and that's exactly what she did. Hey, moms, can you imagine that? You pray for years for a son, and you get him, and as soon as he's weaned, you take him and give him to the high priest, and he lives with the high priest from that day forward. That is Samuel. Key words for the book. Key words for the book of Samuel. The first one's going to be Samuel. You're going to have his story at the beginning of the book. Then you're going to have King Saul, which is going to be most of the second half of this book. But intertwined with that is going to be David before he was king. All of the time with Saul chasing David, trying to kill him, that takes place in 1 Samuel. So when we say 1 Samuel, we got three words. Samuel, Saul, David. Everybody got that? 1 Samuel is going to be Samuel, Saul, and David. In the story, where are we? Genesis, Leviticus, number 2, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. Where are we in Ruth? We're in the promised land, right? I'm getting us back on track. We're in the promised land. Who rules the nation of Israel? Who? God. Thank you very much. God does. He speaks through the judges, but God is the one that's ruling the nation. So the nation, they come to Samuel, and the nation says, we want a king. Everybody else has a king to lead them out to battle, and we want to have a king. And so Samuel goes to God, and he says, hey, the people want a king. And God says, no, they don't. They got me. If they have a king, he will tax them. He will take their daughters to serve in his castle, in his place, and he'll take their sons and he'll put their sons in his army if they want a king. So Samuel comes back to the people and he says, you guys don't want a king, you got God. And if you get a king, this is what's going to happen. And what do you think the people said? Yeah, but everybody else has a king. I mean, we want a king like everybody else. And Samuel was devastated, and God says, don't be. They didn't reject you, they rejected me. We're going to give them a king. And so the first king of the nation of Israel, his name is Saul. He reigned for 40 years. This is what it says about Saul in 1 Samuel. Saul was a choice and handsome man, and there was not a more handsome person than he among the sons of Israel. I mean, Saul was drop dead. He looked good. He looked awesome. More than that, though, from his shoulders and up, he was taller than any of the people. This guy looked like a king. If he would walk in the room today, you'd be like, whoa, that man looks like a king. He's head and shoulders taller than anyone else. He's the best-looking guy in the room. When he walks in, all the ladies go, and the husbands hit him like that. They get the forearm shiver like Dick Kane when Saul walked in the room. That's who, if anyone would look like a king, Saul was the guy who would look like a king. But he wasn't a good king. He was disobedient. And I wish we had time to explore that, but he was not a good king. You know this story, but I want to tell you this story in light of who Saul is. Two armies have drawn up. It's the Israel army and the Philistines. There's a valley in between. One of the Philistines walks out and challenges the God of Israel and challenges the army of Israel and says, send me someone out. If they can beat me, we'll become your slaves, but if I beat them, you'll become our slaves. The giant's name was Jesse. Sends David to go check on the brothers and bring some food. David pulls up just at the time when the giant walks out and curses the God of Israel and challenges them to send a guy out. And David says, Why isn't somebody going out and getting this guy? He just cursed our God. And the brothers, remember, they got ticked off and said, won't you go back to tending those sheep, boy? And that's what they said to David. David says, I'll go take care of the giant. So they bring him before who? Saul, King Saul. Saul puts his armor on David. The boy can't even move. He gives David his sword. David doesn't want it. David's going to use his sling. I killed the bear. God deliver me. The lion, God deliver me. This giant, God will deliver me from him. You know the story. So David walks out onto the field. Picture that day. Picture if you're David's brothers and your little brother walks out onto the battlefield and here comes the giant, and the text says that David ran toward Goliath, and Goliath said, what, did you send a dog out here to fight me? See the sling as it goes around in the air. Watch the giant as he falls face first. Here's the question. Who should have been on the battlefield that day? Who was the biggest guy in Israel? Saul. That's why the next king is going to be the boy who killed the giant, because he had faith and Saul was faithless. So 1 Samuel, 3 words, and they are Samuel and David. But remember, this is David's stories before he becomes king, because he doesn't become king until 2 Samuel, and that's where we are right now. Everybody doing okay? You with me out there? All right, we're going to stop and just review. I'm going to get you to stand up just for a second. And I know what Taylor's thinking. He's like, I just sat down, I'm getting comfortable, I got my leg crossed over here, and now you're going to make me stand up. All right, we're going all the way back to the beginning, and we're going to come up to 1 Samuel, okay? I'll do some of the hand motions, but you guys are going to do the talking. All right, here we go. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. All right, you did pretty good, guys, on that one. You did pretty good on that one. All right, 1 Samuel. Very good. Give yourselves a hand. You did good. All right. You can sit down. We're going to be in 2 Samuel, 24 chapters. All right, who's the next king? David. And that's 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel is the story of David as king. 2 Samuel is the story of David as king. If you look in your Bibles at verse 1 of 2 Samuel, this is what it reads. After the death of Saul, and then 2 Samuel starts off. Originally, 1 and 2 Samuel were one book. And for printing purposes, really, it was divided into 2 books. The same with 1 and 2 Kings. Originally, they were one book. Psalms, on the contrary, was 5 books, and it was put into 1. And we'll get there maybe later on this evening. But 1 and 2 Samuel, so 2 Samuel is really Samuel part 2. It continues the story. And the story in 2 Samuel is going to be about King David, who was a man after God's own heart. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 14, and now your kingdom shall not endure, speaking to Saul. The Lord has sought out for himself a man after his own heart. And the Lord has appointed him as ruler over his people because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. That's Samuel speaking to Saul. In Acts chapter 13, verse 22, this is key about David. Acts was written a long time after David passed away, and this is what Peter says. And he had removed him. He raised up David to be their king, concerning whom he also testified and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, who will do my will. I find that interesting that in David's legacy, he's still in the New Testament called a man after God's own heart. I find it interesting because you know the story of David and Bathsheba. It's in 2 Samuel. And what happened? When the kings, in the spring, when the king should have been out to war, King David's back at home. I don't know what was going on that he didn't. He goes up on his roof. He sees this woman taking a bath, calls her. You know the story of what happens with Bathsheba. But even after Bathsheba, with David's repentance from the nation of Israel and from God's perspective, he's still a man after God's own heart, even though he was a man just like we are. I do want to mention that lust is real. In the scriptures, except for two examples that I can think of, with every one of the patriarchs or everyone that we would say was famous, with every one of them, something happens with sin. I don't care if it's with Noah getting drunk or with Abraham and he lies about his wife, but with David, the one that is pointed out is lust, and it got him, where he becomes guilty of having Uriah the Hittite murdered. And so, hey, if it could happen to David, this is to every man in the room, it's our battle. It could happen to us, right? Yeah, it could happen to us. So I think that's a takeaway. We need to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Proverbs 4:23, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. And so, hey, men, you know the battle for the heart. And 2 Samuel is a lesson for us in that book. All right, I'm at 1 Kings. 1 Kings, 22 chapters. After David, who becomes king? Solomon. Very good. All right, so we got 1 Samuel is Samuel, Saul, David. 2 Samuel is the story of David as king. By the way, Saul 40 years, David 40 years, and now Solomon 40 years. 120 years of the United Kingdom in Israel, where they were all together. 120 years, 40, 40, 40, 120. That's how I remembered it when I was in Bible college. I don't know where I got that from, but it worked. All right, 1 Kings is Solomon, but I'm adding a word to it. Solomon split. All right, when we do 1 Kings, we're going to have two words, and they are Solomon and split. Because after Solomon, Solomon's king, and we're going to talk about him just for a second. After Solomon, his son Rehoboam becomes king, and Rehoboam listens to the advisors of the young men, and he taxes the people even harder, and the nation splits. We'll talk about that in a moment. I want to talk about Solomon for a second. Solomon becomes king when he is a very young man. His dad passes away, 1 Kings. There's a vision in the night, and God says to Solomon, I'm going to paraphrase, I'll give you anything you want. If God told you that, what would you tell him? Anything you want. Didn't someone just win the lottery for $2 billion? I mean, that might be on your hit list right there, $2 billion. That'd make me happy. So he says to Solomon in this night vision, I'll give you anything you want. And this is Solomon's answer. So give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, to discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? Quote unquote Solomon. I need wisdom to rule your people. And this is God's answer to him. It was pleasing in the sight of the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, because you have asked this thing and have not asked for yourself long life, nor riches for yourself, nor have you asked for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself discernment to understanding justice. Behold, I have done according to your words. I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, nor shall one be like you arise after you. I have also given you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so there will not be any among the kings like you all the days of your life. Solomon was the wisest man to walk on the planet except for one other, and his name was who? Jesus. Very good, because he's the God-man. I'm going to tell one story about Solomon. It's a good story. There's two women in the same night. Each of them have babies. When they wake up in the morning, one of the babies had died. The mother of the dead baby swapped it with the mother of the living baby during the night. The mother wakes up and sees the dead baby. She knows it's not her child. And she starts to weep and says, this lady swapped babies with me. What you going to do? Who's telling the truth? They brought the two women before Solomon. They came before Solomon and they presented the case, and Solomon says, I know what we're going to do. Let's take the living baby, cut it in half, and we'll give a half to each of the mothers. Solomon knew that the real mother would say what? No. He knew it. And the real mother says, no, let the other lady have it. And Solomon says, it's her baby, the one that spoke, give her the baby. That was just one of the stories of his wisdom that Solomon had. He was the wisest man to walk on the planet except for Jesus Christ, but he had the same problem his dad did. Solomon had 700 wives and concubines. He had a problem with lust. His dad had it, and men, our sons not only listen to what we say, but they watch what we do. All right, some of you out there laughing about that 700 wife thing. You know what killed Solomon? It's not in the Bible, but he died of pantyhose syndrome. Every time he walked in the bathroom, there was 700 pairs of them. Oh my goodness. It was his downfall. Hey, his wives were his downfall, not because of the lust portion, but because of the false gods that they worshiped. And it was his downfall. He did not finish well. His father David, in repentance, finished well. But Solomon did not finish well. Solomon built the temple. David had set him up for success for that, and Solomon was the one who finished the temple. Let me talk about the split just for a moment, and then we're going to move on. Solomon dies. His son Rehoboam becomes king. He's a young guy. He brings in these young advisors, and then he's got his dad's advisors. And he says, hey, what are we going to do about taxation? And his dad's advisors say, do not tax the people. Your father taxed them to build the temple. You need to let it alone. The young guy said, tax them. And you know who Rehoboam listens to? The young advisors. And so he taxed the people, and the nation of Israel split. 10 nations went to the north. Their capital was Syria. 2 nations stayed in Jerusalem, and that was where their capital was. Israel and Judah. From this point on in the text, when it talks about Israel, it's talking about the northern 10 tribes. And when it talks about Judah, it's talking about the southern 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin. From this point on in the story. So we've got a divided kingdom. In this book, also, 2 of my favorite guys in the Old Testament are in here, Elijah and Elisha. They were the original Blues Brothers. No, I'm kidding. Hey, this is how I remembered Elijah and Elisha. Which one came first? J comes before S. From this day forward, you'll remember that. Who comes first, Elijah or Elisha? J comes before S. That's how I remembered it from all the way back in Bible college. Mighty prophets of God, they are in the book of 1 Kings. All right, 2 Kings, and then we're going to review. Everybody okay? We're doing okay? Yeah. Ooh, all right, here we go. 2 Kings, 25 chapters long, one key word, captivity. 2 Kings is going to give you the story of the kings in the north and the kings in the south, and then both of them are taken off into captivity. The northern 10 tribes are taken off into captivity 7022 BC by the nation of Assyria. They did not have one good king in the north. They did not have one good king in the north, not one. In the south, there were 20 kings. It's a little bit more than 50-50 on good and bad. For 344 years, they existed as a kingdom in the south. 136 of those, they were alone. For 136 years, Assyria came, took the northern 10 tribes away, and they sat down there by themselves, the southern 2 tribes. What else can I say about that? Hey, in 2 Kings, if you're looking at the story, when Judah, at 586 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar comes in, 2 Kings, and takes them off to Babylon, who's living in Jerusalem? Trivia. 586 BC, Judah is taken to Babylon. Who lives in the city at that time? Anyone? Who? Daniel and 3 other guys? Shadrach, Meshach, and away we go. By the way, when you get to heaven, do not call them by those names. I'm just giving you a heads up. That's their Babylonian names. Their Jewish names were Mishael, Azariah, and, oh boy, I forgot. What's the third one? Mishael, Azariah, and, man, I'm drawing a blank. If I was in heaven with the third one, he'd be like, come on, dude, you did this all of your life. You don't even remember who I am? But that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that's their Babylonian names that they were given in captivity. But they would have been alive when Nebuchadnezzar sacked Jerusalem. Jeremiah was in the city when that happened. It got so bad, 2 Kings, the end of the book, it was so bad, they were eating their children in the city. They were starving in the city. And Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Jeremiah, they were all in the city when that happened. When you put the story together, that's when that took place. All right, 2 Kings, the key word is captivity. Key word's captivity. All right, I'm going all the way back to the beginning. Everybody ready? I'm getting something like, no, we better not. Let's do it. Let's try it. We're going to go back to the beginning and walk our way all the way up to where we are now, if that's okay with Paul Panic. All right, here we go. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Everybody with me? Here we go. Cocking back. Let's go. Joshua. I love it. All right, here we go. Judges. Ruth. I even heard Macmillan back there go, love story. That was good, Michael, man. All right. Ruth, love story. 1 Samuel. 2 Samuel. David, very good. All right, 1 Kings. 2 Kings. 3 Kings. Just checking to make sure you're awake out there. All right, let's go to 1 Chronicles. We're at 1 Chronicles. I'm going to tell you a story. There was a man inside of a building, and on this particular day, a storm came up. It was a bad storm. The wind started to blow. The rain started to beat on the roof of the building. Some of the tin on top of the building started to peel off. A tree fell onto the building during that storm. There was another man who was out in a field on the same day at the same hour. He saw the black clouds come up and he saw the lightning and heard the thunder. It started to rain on him, and he started to head back into the village, and he looked over at this building, and he saw a tree fall on it, and some of the roof system blew off. Which man is telling the truth? Ancient riddle. Which one? Not the man inside the building? But he told the truth, but from his perspective. Does that make sense? When you come to 1 Chronicles, 29 chapters, it's the story of 1 and 2 Samuel told again, but from another man's perspective. That's what 1 Chronicles is. It's 1 and 2 Samuel told from a different perspective. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Which one of them told the truth? All of them did, but from different perspectives with different points. So when you come to 1 Chronicles and you see the stories of 1 and 2 Samuel, I promise you, you will pick up things that you don't in 1 and 2 Samuel. It's like reading Matthew or reading John. You're going to pick up different details that another man is going to bring up that he thinks is important and that God thinks is important. Or he wouldn't have put 1 Chronicles in the Bible. So if I'm studying in 1 and 2 Samuel, I'm going to want to find the correlating story in 1 Chronicles and go read that. This journey, as I'm working through the Bible, when I hit 2 Chronicles, it was a book I had never studied or preached out of before. I preached out of it this past Sunday. And I saw things in Second Chronicles I had never seen before, that I did not catch in First and Second Kings. There were some other details that I had missed, and I'll get to that in a moment. All right, so First Chronicles, the key word is First and Second Samuel. First and Second Samuel. Everybody with me on that? All right, let's do it together. First Chronicles. All right, we're going to try that one more time, because that bread banana pudding stuff is like settling down in there, and the tea has crashed. The sugar high is gone. All right, First Chronicles. That was a little bit better. You're doing better there. All right, here we go. I'm going to go to Second Chronicles. Hey, by the way, First, Second Chronicles is going to have the story of Saul and David in it, if it's First and Second Samuel, right? I mean, I'm just putting the pieces of the puzzle together. If you want to read some other things about David, you're going to go to First Chronicles. All right, I'm in Second Chronicles, and the key word is First and Second Kings. First Chronicles, First and Second Samuel. Second Chronicles is First and Second Kings. Everybody got that? So when you get to the end of Second Chronicles, they're going to go off into captivity. Second Chronicles does something a little bit different, though. It traces all the kings of the southern kingdom. It doesn't really deal with the north that much. It'll mention a few of their kings, but it mostly traces the kings of Judah in Second Chronicles. But our key word is First and Second Kings. Second Chronicles is from Solomon all the way to captivity in Second Chronicles. And we looked at that a little bit in this past Sunday sermon. The temple is built. Man, there's so much we could talk about in Second Chronicles. Go back and listen to the sermon. It's all in there. How about that? All right, so Second Chronicles key words are First and Second Kings. Very good. All right. Are we going to review right here? Hey, where are the children of Israel in the story right now in Second Chronicles? Captivity. Babylonian captivity. Very good. All right, let's move on. We'll rehearse in a moment. I'm coming to the book of Ezra. The book of Ezra takes place after the captivity. Ezra comes back to the land of Palestine, and it's in ruins. And the first thing that Ezra works on is the temple. Key word for the book of Ezra is temple. That's the key word. He rebuilds the temple in Jerusalem. God had promised through Jeremiah the prophet in Jeremiah 25 that they would return home. And when Ezra comes home, God's fulfilling his promise. He's bringing them back to the promised land. What else can I say about Ezra? Ezra chapter 9, verse 6. And I said, "Oh my God, I'm ashamed and embarrassed to lift up my face to you, my God, for our iniquities have risen above our heads, and our guilt has grown even to the heavens. But now for a brief moment, grace has been shown from the Lord our God to leave us an escaped remnant and to give us a peg in the holy place, that our God might enlighten our eyes and grant us a little reviving in our bondage. For we're slaves, yet in our bondage our God has not forsaken us, but has extended loving kindness to us in the sight of the king of Persia." The king of Persia not only sends Ezra back, but sends a police escort and papers saying whatever materials you need to rebuild the temple, you got it, by decree of the king. And that's in the book of Ezra. Important note. I'm going to say this now, and this is important for the rest of the Old Testament. The prophets Haggai and Zechariah lived during the time of Ezra. All of the prophets, 17 books of the prophets, that's their sermons. But the prophets live during the story. Does that make sense? For instance, Jeremiah lived when Israel was defeated by Nebuchadnezzar. What book did Jeremiah live in? 2 Kings. Jeremiah lived in 2 Kings. The book of Jeremiah is his sermons that he preached. And that's the case for all of the prophets. The prophets were in Judah, Israel, or to Gentile nations. The books of the prophets are their sermons. And some of the prophets are actually mentioned in the books like 1 Kings, 2 Kings. They're in there, their names are. All right, important note. I feel like I'm putting you guys to sleep. We better get to Nehemiah. I'm going to talk about a politician. That's a good thing to talk about after last night, right? Woohoo! Yeah, the big red wave. All right, here we go. Nehemiah, 13 chapters. Nehemiah, 13 chapters. Nehemiah came back home and he helped to rebuild the wall. Matter of fact, Pink Floyd, their whole thing on the wall came from the book of Nehemiah. I'm kidding, that's not true. Trump tried to build a wall, and Nehemiah got a whole wall around a whole city done in 52 days. That's how long it took him, 52 days. Under opposition the whole time. All of surrounding kingdoms did not want that wall rebuilt. So this is what Nehemiah said. With one hand, you're going to do work, and with the other one, you keep a sword in your hand. I'm going to put the trumpeters on the wall. If they blow the trumpets, you take your sword, drop the trowel in your hand, and we're going to go to war. 52 days, the whole wall was restored and all the gates put back in place. It was almost a miracle what took place in those 52 days. Nehemiah is an incredible politician. He becomes the mayor of Jerusalem. And the 10 years that he was mayor, he did not take a dime from the people. Not one penny. The book of Nehemiah says it. A funny note from the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah went back to Babylon for a season. He came back home, and they quit taking the tithe in the temple that had been restored. So that meant that the Levites weren't getting paid, and a big one, the musicians weren't getting paid in the temple. There was no music in the temple. There was no sacrifices in the temple. And the people had started to intermarry with the Gentiles. And when he came back, Andrew and Josiah and I've used this on them over the years. Boy, if you don't get your act together, I'm going to go Nehemiah on you. When he came back, it says he grabbed their beards and slapped them in the face. It's in the book. You can read it. That wouldn't work well in this room except for Kyle. He's the only one that's got a beard I could grab right there. But in the book of Nehemiah, that it's a true story. It's in there. It's one of the last chapters in the book. I think it's in like chapter 13. And to this day, we still laugh. I'll go Nehemiah on you. You know, today it's I'll go postal. Back then is I'll go Nehemiah. All right, Ezra is keyword. Temple. Nehemiah is the wall. Nehemiah is the wall. I'm going to back up to where? Let me get my outline. I'm going to pick a spot. Pick a spot, any spot. I'm going to go back to 1 Samuel. You got to put your thinking caps on. We're going to pick up in 1 Samuel. All right, key words for 1 Samuel are, very good. Hey, when you say 1 Samuel, it's obvious the story of Samuel is going to be in there, right? All right, that's like free parking on the Monopoly board. Then you got the first king and the second king are in there. All right, 2 Samuel, David. All right, 3 Samuel, I got a few of you. A few of you bid on that one, on that 3 Samuel thing. I got a couple of you. All right, 1 Kings, Solomon and split. 2 Kings, captivity. 1 Chronicles, very good. 2 Chronicles, very good. 3 Chronicles, good. It's good when I hear silence. I know you're tracking. All right, Ezra, temple, and then Nehemiah is the wall. Hey, we're moving tonight. Let's go to Esther. Where are we in the story, by the way? In the story, where are we? We're back home. The book of Esther takes place while they're in captivity. The book of Esther takes place while they're in captivity. It's 10 chapters long, and the key word for the book is Persian queen. Everybody got that? Let's do it. Esther. Very good. Esther, Persian queen. The 4 key characters in the book. One of those would be Esther. That's free parking on the Monopoly board. You got King Xerxes. That's his Greek name. Ahasuerus is his Hebrew name. And both of those are given in the book. You got Mordecai and Malachi, No, that's not right. Mordecai and Haman are the other two key characters. 4 key characters. Mordecai, and I did not know this until this journey. I always thought Mordecai was Esther's uncle. He's not. Mordecai is Esther's cousin, older cousin that raised his niece. Not niece, his cousin. Woo! I can get that messed up. It says it twice in the book that he was the cousin of Esther. Twice it says it in the book. And by the way, where is that? I'm not going to do that yet. I'll get that in a little bit. Mordecai, Esther's cousin, Haman, bad guy. Hated the Jews. Wanted to have all the Jews killed, and even made a deal with the king. I'm going to give you so many talents of silver if you'll set a day throughout the whole empire where we can wipe out the Jews. And the king decreed it. And then that's when Esther's cousin says, you need to go talk to the king because you're the wife. Hey, I didn't even do the wife thing yet, did I? No, I didn't. You know how Esther became the wife? She won a beauty contest. The king's wife did a no-show at a party. I think that's in chapter 1. The king got ticked off and said, you're out. And all of the guys in the court said, hey, why don't we do a beauty contest and we'll get you a new wife? And they did. And this Jewish girl who was beautiful became king in Persia, queen in Persia. Man, I'll get this right. So she became queen. So when Haman wants to destroy the Jews, that's when Mordecai says, you need to go tell the king what's going on. And Esther says, it could cost me my life. If I go into the presence of the king without being summoned, if he doesn't reach out his staff to me, then I could be killed. And that's when this phrase came up. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this? And most all of us, we've heard that phrase. That's the cousin talking to Esther. It's your time to show up. All of God's plan was set in place for you to intervene for the children of Israel. The book of Esther, the main point, God's name is not mentioned one time in the entire book. Not one time. But it's a book that shows even in captivity, behind the scenes, God was taking care of his people. Sometimes when he's not mentioned, or sometimes when you don't even think about him, he's still at work. He's still taking care of business. He'll never leave us or forsake us. He has our back. And you learn that lesson when you look at the book of Esther. Key word for Esther is Persian queen. We got 12 minutes. I got 5 poetical books. Let's do it. Let's jump into them. How about that? Before we do it, let's all stand up. Everybody stand up. We're going to go with the arm motions too this time. Get y'all moving a little bit, a little Bible aerobics here at Rainbow Presbyterian Church. We're going all the way back to the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready? I just want to encourage you. It was 1982 that I learned the story that I'm teaching to you. It was 1982, an Old Testament survey. I didn't know anything about the Bible back then. I was a new believer. And a prof taught us walk through the Old Testament. And I've taught it to, I don't know, thousands of people from America to Africa since then. And it helped me to get a grasp. The Old Testament seems old and so much stuff, but it's really just a story. And that's what we're learning tonight. It's just a story. All right, Genesis, Exodus. All right, let's get them hands going. We're going to do Exodus again. You ready? Exodus. Key chapter in Exodus, 20. Why? 10 Commandments. All right, Leviticus. Name one feast. Feast. Tabernacles, very good. All right, that's Leviticus. Numbers. There's a bad book in the Bible? Yeah, why? Why is it a bad book? A lot of bad things happen. All right, Deuteronomy. All right, you got to get ready. Everybody get ready. Come on, let me see you. Joshua. Genuine Joshua. I like that. That's a man's book. It works. All right, Judges. All right, careful, guys. McMillan, he's gone. Good, because he was going to mess this up. Ruth. Oh, very good. All right, 1 Samuel. 2 Samuel. All right, 1 Kings. Solomon did. 2 Kings. All right, very good. 3 Kings. Aha, very good. All right, 1 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles. Ezra. Nehemiah. Esther. Persian Queen. There you go. Y'all getting all that stuff right there, too. Y'all can use that in Sunday school. Hey, give yourselves a hand. You're doing good. All right, you can be seated. I'm going to do Job, and then we'll probably call it quits, and we'll pick up next week. Key words for the book of Job are suffering and sovereignty. You could put a lot of titles on this book, but I think those two words, suffering and sovereignty, cover the two major themes that you find in the book of Job. It's one of the oldest books in the Bible. In the book of Job, in chapter 40 and in chapter 41, you have dinosaurs, Behemoth and Leviathan. At the time of Job, dinosaurs were still on the planet. Some people say it was a hippopotamus or whatever. Hey, I've been to Africa. When God talks about these two animals, he says, who's going to dare to go put a hook or a spear in Behemoth or Leviathan? No one does. Hey, you can kill, someone in Africa could kill a hippo, right? Yeah, you could kill hippos with a spear. But these two, whatever these monsters were so big that no one would dare to go approach them. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you another one. At the time of King David, he says, there go the ships and there goes Leviathan. Even in the Mediterranean at the time of King David, one of these large beasts still existed at the time of King David. All right, it's one of the oldest books in the Bible. Well, I thought Genesis was the oldest book in the Bible. Well, true, it records the history of the beginning, but as far as the oldest written book, Job was probably the first one that was written. It's that old. I know that Job is one of the oldest books in the Bible. Here's the proof of what they use. Jerusalem's not mentioned, and none of the patriarchs are mentioned. It mentions Job as the richest man on the planet, and no one else is mentioned in the book. So they're saying it predates any other book that we have written in the Bible. Job, oldest book. This is Job. Let me introduce you to the man. There was a man in the land of Uz, another key to why we say it's the oldest book, because it's not mentioned anywhere else, whose name was Job, and the man was blameless, upright, fearing God, and turning away from evil. That's his legacy. He was blameless, upright, fearing God, and turning away from evil. Job was very wealthy. He was a blessed man. We learned that in chapter 1. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. Job lets us see, how many of you ever seen the movie The Wizard of Oz? Wizard of Oz? Remember the scene where the little dog, Toto, pulls the curtain back and you get to see behind the curtain? In the book of Job, we get to do that. In the book of Job, just for an instance, the curtain is pulled back, you get to look into heaven. And you get to see what happens in heaven. All right, pop quiz question. Where is Satan right now? Right now, where is he? I know what Lee's saying. He's sitting next to me. No, that's not true. He's like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. He's roaming to and fro on the earth. All right, true. He is on planet Earth. Most people, all the years that I've been doing this, the number one answer is he's in hell. He's got the pitchfork, he's got the pointy tail thing, and he's tormenting. He's not in hell. Satan doesn't want to go to hell. Hell's the place of eternal punishment. He's not in hell. He doesn't want to go there. Period. He's roaming to and fro on the planet right now, like a roaring lion, and then Job, he's in heaven. This is what the text says. Where am I? Job, man, I got it. Job 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Satan also came among them. Why? Why would Satan be among the sons of God? Because he's an angel. And as the angels were presenting themselves before the Creator, Satan is a fallen angel, and he still presents himself before the authority, which is God Almighty. That's Job chapter 1. The Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" And Satan answered the Lord and said, "From roaming about on the earth." Stephen, you knocked it. That's right. You got it right. Walking around on it, the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There's no one like him on the earth, blameless and upright man." This is God's opinion of Job. He's a blameless and upright man. He fears me, turning away from evil. That's God's opinion of the man. And then you know the story of the challenge where Satan says, "Yeah, but the only reason that Job follows you is because you blessed him." And God says, "All right, cool, go take away the blessings." And he does, including the 10 children. All right, I want to step in and do this right now. Mrs. Job gets a bum rap. Well, first of all, let me clear this up. When I get to heaven, I want to find this lady, and I want to find her first name. Because everyone for thousands of years have called her Mrs. Job. She's got to have a first name. When you get to heaven, I'm going to introduce you, and I'll have her first name. It's Mrs. Somebody Job. And when I get there, I'm curious. She gets a bum rap because what does she tell her husband? "Hey, I get it. I want to take you into her sandals." Mrs. Job and Job are dating. They get married. They have their first child. Job is a farmer, and he's got livestock. He works very hard. His cattle, they start to grow, the number. His sheep and his cows and his goats. To where the herds get so big, Job starts hiring people, and he buys and sells his cattle. And it gets to be so big that he's got more servants than you could count. Over those years of all of the building of that business, Mrs. Job has 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters. All the years of family building, Mrs. Job. And in one day, all 7 of her sons and 3 of her daughters are dead. Now, you put yourself in her sandals, and what would you say? What would be the state of your mind? How would you be doing spiritually? That's Mrs. Job. I want to tell you the rest of the story of Mrs. Job that most people don't even talk about. You go to the last chapter of the book of Job. I don't think she ever forgot those 10. But the Lord gives her 10 more at the end of the book. I'm going to tell you, we're all adults. I can do this tonight. I'm going to tell you what that means in English. All of the grieving that took place, at some point there was some healing in the life of Job and his wife. And they started to sleep together, and they started to have kids again. And there was an excitement in the house. There were 10 missing, but there were 10 new ones that came in. That's real with Mrs. Job and Mr. Job, if you put yourself in their sandals. But I want to tell you the rest of the story. For the last 4,000 years plus, Mr. and Mrs. Job have been in heaven with all 20 of the kids. And when we get to heaven, I don't know any of the kids' names. I'm going to get their names. I'll write them out. When you get there, I'm going to introduce you to Mrs. What's her name, Job, and all 20 of the kids, because I believe they're there. For 4,000 years, they've been in the perfect. When they look at the past, at all of the hurt that took place, and it was real. The loss was real in the life of Job and his wife. But the rest of eternity, they celebrate with their kids. That's the story. Hey, it may happen to us in the journey. We're going to lose people along the way. It's going to happen. For all of us as believers, the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to be in the presence of the Lord forever. Never ending. That's one lesson from the book of Job. Hey, lessons from this book. If God's a good guy, why does he let the innocent suffer? Why does he let bad things happen? Why does he let this happen to Job? I'm going to tell you this one. He never gives the answer to why he did that. In the whole book, I don't know it in the book that he tells Job, hey, Job, this is why I did it. It was a challenge with the devil. It's not in the book. The lesson that is in the book is, hey, Job, I'm God. You can trust me. Even when you don't know the answers and you don't know the next step. I am God. You can trust me. That's the lesson. Suffering and sovereignty are the two key themes in this entire book. Another one is it's okay to wrestle with God. He can handle it. Job wrestles with God in this book. Hey, I don't understand this. If you would just give me a moment to talk to you about what's happening here, you would see my side of the story, and this shouldn't have happened. And God does come. God enters Job's courtroom and says, all right, I'll take the witness stand. Let's have a talk. It's okay to wrestle with God. I learned that from the book of Job. As a matter of fact, James chapter 1 says that when we're in the trials, we can ask him when we don't understand, and he will answer us. James chapter 1, verse 5. When you're in the middle of suffering and you don't understand, go to him. Job went to the right place. His problem was he started to accuse God of doing the wrong thing. That's where Job got off the tracks. That's where we get off the tracks. One of the main things in the book of Job is, you can trust me when you don't understand. He does cause all things to work together for good to those that love him, to those that are called according to his will, his purpose. He does. Even the things that we call evil or wicked, he is using to do this. I've learned this in the last year of my life. Do you know what he's doing right now in your life, brothers and sisters? He's preparing you to be in his presence. And one of the ways he does it is through suffering. Right now, he's prepping us to stand in his holy presence, face to face with him. And in the brokenness, he's using that to conform us to the image of Jesus Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit that indwells us. Right now, that's what he's doing. Book of Job. Suffering is real in this life. We brought it into the equation. Can't throw God under the bus on that one. Hey, why would a good God let bad things happen? Hey, he didn't. We did it. Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Just as through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin, and death passed to all men because all sinned. Don't blame Adam either, because you sinned just like Adam did, and I sinned just like Adam did. We live in the brokenness. We brought it in, and God turns it into his good. 7:03, our time is up. Thank you, Lee. I saw that wrist turn right there. The preacher got to preaching right at the end. Hey, next week we're going to pick up in the book of Psalms. Before we go, though, I think it would be fitting for us to stand up and do one quick review. How about that? Your kids are going to be like, what were you so late, Mom and Dad? You're going to be like, hey, we were studying the story of the Old Testament. All right, we're going back. We're going to go all the way through the book of Job. We're going to go all the way through the book of Job. Watch the Cajun, because you'll throw that 3 Corinthians thing in, the Chronicles in there, 3 Kings. You got to keep your thinking cap on. All right, hand motions are proper. Here we go. Genesis, Exit, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Get it ready. Here we go. Everybody get ready. Joshua. General Joshua. Very good. Judges. Careful. Ruth. I was watching you, Alex. You did good on that one, brother. Love story. Oh, my goodness. 1 Samuel. 2 Samuel. 1 Kings. 2 Kings. 1 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles. Ezra. Nehemiah. Esther. All right, Job. All right, that was a new one. You did good on that. We didn't get the Psalms. That's it. We end right there. Hey, Pastor Kane, would you pray for us?